Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I really appreciate those of you who have stuck around because I feel like I was called to be here today and share a very important message with you. Unfortunately, every single other speaker that went before me pretty much had a bit of my speech, so you've already heard my entire speech throughout the whole day. And yes, I am the attorney who will be fighting tooth and nail, probably a very long battle for Steve Bucola, as there is no doubt that what he did was what he needed to do, and we need to figure out a way to support people like him. Unfortunately, as it's been discussed, we are living in times when governors set aside statutes with a stroke of a pen, turning constitutionally protected rights into criminal actions. And where criminal actions like rioting and terrorizing others are being protected by governors and attorney general offices all across our United States. It's with that in mind that I come talk to you today. But to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. First of all, I'm a Christian. I'm a wife to that really handsome dude right there. Mike, like this, so I'm not randomly funny. Thanks. I'm a mother of 4. I'm a homeschooling parent. I'm a business owner. And more relevant to you, I'm a constitutional attorney, and I'm actually the author of the Restore Freedom Initiative constitutional amendment petition that's being circulated in the state of Michigan right now to help fix all this tyranny and this garbage that's happening. And we're in the process of the uphill battle, if you will, of getting 425,059 signatures to get us on the 2022 ballot. I'm also a constitutional advocate and educator, and like many of you, I've taken an oath of office. Originally, I was licensed as an attorney in the state of Minnesota, and then moving back to the state of Michigan, I've now been licensed there, as well as the Western and Eastern Districts Federal District Court for Michigan, the Saginaw Tribal Court, and lastly, the United States Supreme Court. And I'm here to tell you today that almost every single thing you've probably ever heard about the Constitution before today was wrong. And that's not your fault. Because, well, not your fault so far. As long as you've been paying attention today, you're going to be fine. But you don't learn about the Constitution the right way in the academy, just the same as I didn't really learn about the Constitution the right way going to law school. And don't get me wrong, I'm a hard-working student, a hard-working attorney, but it took a lot of my own research to figure out what really is involved with the Constitution. And we're taught, quite frankly, about what all the court cases say, right? We're taught what judges rule on certain motions. But for the most part, what all those judges do is irrelevant. Because courts, like has been said earlier today, are not there to create case law. There is no such thing as case law. And also, like has been said, the Declaration of Independence very clearly says that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it is to secure those rights that governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And in our U.S. Constitution preamble, it says that in order to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, we established our U.S. Constitution. Those are very old words written in 2 very old documents, but they remain just as true today, and they are exceedingly important. In fact, it's important that we pay attention to something that I don't think was mentioned today. Article 4, Section 4 of our U.S. Constitution. That guarantees to us a republican form of government. That means that government cannot act unless we, the people, gave permission in our Constitution for government to do that act. So anyone here, anyone listening later, when you are acting as a government agent of any kind, elected official or peace officer or anything, you must ask yourself if your state or federal constitution gave you the authority to do so. And although it is thought by some that our state government or federal government is responsible for public health, public safety, and public welfare, terms that we've heard a few times today, I wanted to point out a couple of things about that. Namely, those general powers have literally no basis in our U.S. Constitution. In fact, if you look for the word welfare in our U.S. Constitution, it only appears twice. In the preamble to the U.S. Constitution, it reminds us that we established our Constitution and formed our government to, among other things, promote the general welfare, not to regulate it. Then in Article 1, Section 8, we see that Congress has the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. The sentence continues, but all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. It's very important to realize that's all part of the same sentence. Because given the sentence as a whole, it is clear to see that provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States refers simply to that term in the financial sense, like how a father goes to work to provide for his family. This also fits with the meaning of that term that term had at the time the Constitution was written. In fact, the British Dictionary provides for as to supply means of support to, especially financially. So there is no underlying authority of the government to regulate us for the general welfare. Also, the term safety, not even public safety, just safety, appears only once in our U.S. Constitution. In fact, that is in Article 1, Section 9, where it states that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety may require it. Again, that provision does not provide any governmental authority to act, but for the rare need to suspend the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. And finally, public health, the one that we've heard a lot recently in the news because of all the masks and the social distancing and all that they need to do to take care of us because we're too stupid to do it for ourselves. The term health is found no times, zero times in the entire United States Constitution. Thus, there is no constitutional basis for the government to exercise any authority relating to public health. So while it's important that we remember that when we're acting on behalf of the government, that we have to make sure that we have that authority given to us in our U.S. or state constitution, that's not the case for us as individuals when we, the people, are exercising our rights. We don't have to prove that we have the right to do anything. As long as we are exercising our own rights and not directly impairing the rights of others, that's the important thing. In fact, as it's been mentioned through the quotes that I mentioned earlier, as well as in many of the presentations and speeches earlier, God gave us our rights, not the government. And we created our system of government to protect those rights. It was very eloquently explained much earlier in speeches that our entire system literally is in existence to protect our God-given liberties. So while I wanted to share with you earlier, my plan was to talk about the highlights of the first, second, well, all of the amendments of the Bill of Rights. I don't have as much time as I was originally going to have. So what I want to focus on is the Ninth Amendment. And the Ninth Amendment of the Constitution is that special one that we often overlook. And it says, I'm not going to quote it to you, you guys can read it, but what it says is, just because we've identified certain rights that are given to us in our U.S. Constitution, that does not mean that's the entire list and everything else is just something we have to prove. We have those unenumerated rights just the same as all the ones that are enumerated, And we need to make sure we have that job to do, as the demonstration showed us before, that our state and local and federal governments are there to protect those rights, even the unenumerated ones. Also, sorry, I'm flipping fast because I know I'm short on time here. Now, I don't believe that judges or courts can make case law, but I like to throw the words back at them as much as I can. So I wanted to share with you that the Constitution meant at the time of its adoption what it means today. And the great clauses of the Constitution...
You have actually more time. Take about 15 seconds.
Okay, thank you. The Constitution meant at the time of its adoption what it means today. And the great clauses of the Constitution must be confined to the interpretation which the framers, with the conditions and outlook of their time, would have placed upon them. That's very important because we've heard over and over and over again that, times change, and the way things were written back then, the framers could not have possibly foreseen that all the things, the bad, scary, awful things that happen in our world today. And so they weren't, smart enough, or they didn't have the technology, or they did not have the understanding in order to put into place things that they needed to ensure the rights that we have today. In fact, I was told in law school on many, many occasions that the Constitution is a growing, living document. And I believed that for many years. And for many other reasons, I'm thankful that God brought me my husband. One reason that I know he was brought to me, or I was brought to him, is because I was actually, I'll just say a Hillary supporter. No, I was never a Hillary supporter, but I was a Democrat. And I believed in the concept of this living, breathing document because, quite frankly, that's what I grew up with. I didn't grow up knowing what it was like to be Christian. I didn't know what it was like to grow up really being proud to be an American or to even read the Constitution. So it's taken me a lot of years to figure out those things that I wish I had been taught all along. But you can better believe I'm teaching my kids. And every single teenager I see on the street, I grab them right on up and I ask them what the first 10 amendments to our U.S. Constitution are. No kidding. So it's important that we realize that those words mean exactly what they need to mean. They are there for a reason. It's not a living, breathing, moving, changing document. It is very important, and it's just as important today as it was back then. And we've had, countless lives of men and women that have been lost all throughout these years since that was originally put in place to fight for those words, to fight for the freedoms that are secured by that very document. So with that in mind, I was also asked to address Article 6, which has been talked about today. But Article 6 is the Supremacy Clause, which doesn't hurt to repeat that. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It says so right in our U.S. Constitution. And Marbury versus Madison totally explained to us that any law that or even government act that goes to the contrary of that Constitution is void on its face. In fact, something else to share with you about that. An unconstitutional act is not a law. It confers no rights, it imposes no duties, it affords no protection, it creates no office. It is, in legal contemplation, as inoperative as though it had never been passed. And that is something that our United States Supreme Court figured out at least as far back as 1886. So while they forget that today, they already knew it back then, and it's time that we remind them. Another important thing, though, I think is much more important, actually, is also in Article 6 that tells us that we have an oath that basically anybody who is in legislative, executive, or judicial capacities in the United States, serving either in federal or state capacities, is bound by the oath to support the Constitution. And I know there was a different oath, a much more lengthy version that was displayed earlier. But this, in the Constitution, simply says that you shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. And that is something I want to impress upon all of you, because it's something, those words are so simple and yet so powerful. In fact, a lot of, I'm assuming all, but at least our state constitution in the state of Michigan says that you are duty bound. You have to take an oath under Article 11, Section 1 of our state constitution to support the U.S. and Michigan constitutions, and no other oath shall be taken, period. It says that right in there. That's a very important concept and something that we need to take very seriously. Sorry, there really is nothing up here holding notes. No wonder why everybody was struggling today. So what does this mean for you? Well, something that was alluded to, but yet something that I think needs to be hammered on a little bit more. Our United States Supreme Court declared in 1934, emergency does not create power. Emergency does not increase the power that's granted or remove or diminish the restrictions placed upon power granted or reserved. The Constitution was in fact adopted in a period of grave emergency, was it not? Its grants of power to the federal government and its limitations of the power on the states were determined in light of that emergency, and they are not altered by emergency today. And another important aspect is that the claim and exercise of a constitutional right cannot thus be converted into a crime. And that was something that was explained to us by the federal courts in 1956. Yet we have these in many states, such as mine, executive orders that make it a misdemeanor to not wear a mask, or to allow somebody in your business who's not wearing a mask, or a variety of other things. Basically, if you're not following the governor's every whim, you'll be charged with a crime. And as I said before, an unconstitutional act is not a law. Again, those are not my words. Those are words from our federal courts from years ago, and yet they have somehow, most of them, have seemed to have forgotten those very concepts. So I don't care how high somebody gets in public office. I don't care if I was face-to-face with Chief Justice Roberts or anybody else. If they have forgotten their oath of office, shame on them. We need to hold them accountable. So what does that mean for you here? First of all, don't enforce the unconstitutional executive orders in your state, wherever you're from. You have a duty not to. Also, do your part to hold your state's elected officials accountable. Darleaf has been a champion with me, fighting to try to figure out ways to hold our state elected officials accountable, because there is no election that can come soon enough for the things that she and others have done to us in our state of Michigan. Make sure you are doing your part in that regard. I need you, I'm begging you, continually read and know and study your U.S. and your state constitutions. It's not something you're going to pick up overnight. It's not something that's going to necessarily all sink in all at once. It's something I knew I was going to be a lawyer in kindergarten. No joke, kindergarten. I've been studying this stuff for many years. And it's only recently, it's only COVID that finally awakened the spirit within me to fight against all the tyranny, no matter what the cost. Amen. All of us need to have that same spirit. But the flip side to that is, I'm a lawyer. I have a lot of student loan debt to prove it. It does not take a lawyer to read the Constitution. This is not a government of politicians and attorneys, and most politicians and most attorneys, quite frankly, are criminals, and they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Do not ever let any judge, any court, any attorney, anyone tell you, as a law enforcement official, as a citizen of the United States, that you simply just don't know how to read the Constitution that you don't have a right to read it or understand it, and that you need to wait for the Supreme Court to explain it to you. If they do, well, you can let me know. I'll head out, because I have no more patience for any of that garbage these days. But we know that it's not easy. I haven't taken a single day off in this fight since the first week of April, because our state government, even our Republican legislature, people that I have considered friends for several years, lots of good Christian conservative attorneys and politicians that I've looked up to for a long time, have been on the wrong side of this. I'll just say it that way. Their most common thing is, well, that's just not how things are done, Catherine. I don't care how things are done. We're going to do it the right way, whether it's popular or not. But I know not everyone was created with that spirit of feistiness like I was. And many people, when they're parents, they're very thankful for that. I can tell you my mom was pulling her hair out many years. But I wanted to share with you a few things as I close. So, aside from the U.S. and Michigan Constitutions, one of my favorite books that I like to turn to is the Holy Bible.
Amen.
And in Romans 2:13, it says, "It is those who obey the law who will be declared righteous." And what did we say about Article 4, Section 4? We have a Republican form of government that is guaranteed to us so that we, the people, are the ones in the ultimate authority. If our government steps outside of the authority given to them under the U.S. or state constitution, then they no longer have that authority. That's literally the definition of stepping outside of that authority. So we, by following the Constitution, first of all, we owe that duty, a Romans 13:7 duty. We owe that to each other as fellow citizens of the United States to follow that Constitution. But also, by us following it, we will be obeying the law, we will be declared righteous, and God will have our back. Also, in 8:28, it says that, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." I'm guessing that the most part, if not all of you in this room, feel like you have been called to be here, been called to be in the role that you're in, to serve Him in order to do all of this, to be a law enforcement officer in some way, or whatever your capacity is being here today. So just know that it's going to be hard, but God does use all of that for our good. And in fact, He says that in all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. And in fact, in Ezekiel chapter 11, He says that when the leaders of the people are giving wicked advice in the city, He's calling us to speak out against them, to speak the right word at the right time in the right way. And in Psalms, to be of good courage, and He shall strengthen your heart, all ye that hope in the Lord. And that in God I trust, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? And yes, we've heard stories about what man can do to us, right? But we need to remember that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, as it says in Philippians 4:13, or in Ezekiel 2:6, "And you, son of man, do not be afraid of them or their words. Do not be afraid, though briars and thorns are all around you, and you live among scorpions." And lastly, 2 Timothy 1:7, "For God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." And I'm going to urge you and beg you, each and every one of you, to use that power, that love, that sound mind that God gave you to fight for each other, to fight for our freedom, no matter what the cost, because it's not going to be easy. But in fact, nothing worth having is going to be easy. Everything worth having is worth fighting for. And obviously you believe in that, and that's why you're here today. So thank you for that.